In terms of strategy, uh, what then you say would be the strategy for GVI?
The strategy is still a bit, let's say, developing at the moment because it's always a question whether I hire a lot of people and build up a big team or if I
Hmm.
work a bit independently with external partners, which gives me more flexibility. So, this is always something I'm asking myself. I haven't decided yet. So that's fine. On the other hand, I have not really needed to reach out to startups. They always came to me via networks, also via LinkedIn. So I'm very happy and I'm not focused on one domain. So I'm open as long as I can relate to that sector or domain they are working. It's fine. It doesn't matter where they are coming from. I'm always happy to support it from whatever country they are.
Welcome to the UMG podcast. I'm your host, Jerome Sheldon. As always, we have a beautiful show for you today. Now, if you're new to this channel, we ask you to please like and subscribe in the link below. So, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome again to the UMG podcast. And as always, as mentioned, we have a delightful show for you today. We have a very interesting guest that's going to be on the platform with us today. He comes from a successful family business in the third generation, and he also has an extensive experience in the mobility market over about 16 years. He's the CEO and also founder of GVI Investment. And of course, he works with startups, scale ups, as well as with venture capitalists from various countries and culture. He has a significant track record, I would say, of successfully leading international companies as a CFO and also as a CEO about over 25 years. He has been involved in international projects for McKinsey, Roland Becker, PwC, and Strategy. And moreover, he has been a keynote speaker on international events, such as the one in the War Mobility Show in Dubai, and also to in the FITC in Nigeria. He's a dear friend of mine as well. He's part of the business or the World Business Angel Investment Forum as a senator for Germany, and also as a country chair for Germany as well too. And last but not least, He's the president of the German chapter of the Asia CEO community. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Frank Beckmann.
Hello, everybody. Jerome. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Jerome.
Oh, thank you so much, Frank. It's glad to have you here with us. So,
Mhm.
to get started, as always, we try to give our audience a little background of our guests, a little personal one. I know you're somebody who is very popular, but it may be something that may not know a lot about you. And so we take a few time to kind of go back a little bit and to see who Frank is. So now I want to assume that you were born and raised in Germany, right?
Right, right.
Okay. So what part of Germany was that?
That was close to Hanover, actually. So it's a bit north, middle north. And I was raised on the countryside, actually, in a family business in the third generation. And we were three generations under one roof. So we were a large family. And when I grew up, even as a kid, I helped in the company of my parents working. So what they did and how they led the company was something which is now part of my DNA. So entrepreneurship is really at my heart. It's just because, I was raised in that and I saw the importance of this.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. So here in the States, we say a country boy, pretty much in the
Yeah,
countryside.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I changed that. That's maybe because now I'm very global and I love to be in other cultures, being inspired and whatever. Maybe it's because I'm coming from the countryside and I needed to know a bit more than just the village around me, let's say. It was four houses, I think, in my village. It was not
Mhm.
really big.
Oh, okay. So did you come from a large family or a small net family?
It's a large family, actually. So I have two brothers two brothers, and they have also families, and we have our family gathering every year a few times. So family is very important to us as well.
Oh, okay. Yes, and it's the same thing with me. Growing up in Africa, family is very huge, and very, like you said, very important to all of us. So now, if we move up a little bit, say high school, how was Frank like in high school? Studious, a troublemaker? What was it?
Haha, that's a good question. No, it was more the quiet person. I was the quiet person. I was observing. I was learning. As I'm coming from the countryside, and my school was in a larger city, that was all new to me. So if something is new, I'm observing. I'm learning. I'm a bit more in the back. I built my own network with friends, and that's more it. Yeah. So I'm rather the harmony guy. So I'm balancing between different groups. But in case something is coming up and nobody dares to stand in front, then it's me. So if nobody goes ahead, I don't have a problem in taking any risk, going to the front and standing up for it.
Oh, wow. So we can say you had that somewhat like an entrepreneurial spirit for a very early age, so to
Yeah,
speak, taking the lead.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes, it was unconsciously actually, but you're right. You're absolutely right, Jerome. Well
right.
observed.
Okay. Now, is that something that came up naturally for you? I mean, is it something
Absolutely.
that natural or something
Absolutely.
that you had to develop?
Absolutely, that was naturally. That was naturally. I mean, if you have sisters and brothers, you have a certain position in that one. Very
Yeah.
often, the elder brother is the one who is a bit more dominant, who is a bit more straightforward, and the second one, he's a bit in the shade, so he develops in a bit different way. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So now I'm assuming that you moved from that little village. Did you move into the city? Is that what it was? Or did you
Yes,
kind of grew up
absolutely.
all through in the village, so to speak, or in the
Uh,
rural area?
yes, until I finished high school, I lived at my parents' place in the countryside, and then I did apprenticeship with a Deutsche Bank, a bank in Germany, in a larger city in Hanover, actually, and then I went studying to Hamburg. So that was really a larger city. It's the second biggest city here in Germany, about 1.3 million inhabitants. And I really enjoyed that, having a large city, living in the center, quite in the center, having all this bustling commerce and people consumption and people around. I loved that actually.
Okay, it's interesting because I'm going to ask you, was there any kind of a challenge for you? Did you, making the adjustment from a smaller city to the bigger city? How was that like
That was
during
very
that time?
easy. That was very easy, actually. I really absorbed it like a sponge because I was really, yeah, I was looking forward to learn more about the world because my world, when I was raised up, was very small. And I realized it was large and I wanted to learn so much about other people, about other cultures. So, yeah, that's why I was not only studying economics, but also some Chinese to have some cultural background as well in the study. And I did a lot of work in between to finance my study and also to work in companies to learn how it works to work in a different in a large bank or for instance for Hapag Lloyd or other companies.
Oh, okay. And I can tell too because you speak very fluently in English as well, and I know German is your first language. So,
Right.
how did you got so fluent in speaking English?
Thanks very much. That's just my love for languages. It's just, I love it. And most business is in English because I'm international. So I think 90% of my communication nowadays in business is English. So it becomes quite natural after a while. But still, I'm learning and I'm happy to improve my English always.
Yes. Okay, we really appreciate that. Okay, so we got a little bit understanding of you on the personal side. So we'll try to pivot a little bit now into your professional side of things. You mentioned you started off with was it Deutsche Bank? You said as an
Right.
intern. How was that
Mhm.
experience?
Oh, that was terrible. It was not really my world. I mean, I had to do that. I promised that to my father, and I did it, but I didn't love that. I'm not a banker. I'm not a guy sitting always on the table and just working for finance stuff, whatever. No, I love more also to work with people and to work in smaller environments. So I was very happy when that ended, actually.
Okay. And so how was that trip then? How so you left there, where did you go next to?
Actually, after my studies, I went first to Munich. I worked in the business analyst, controlling finance part for Daimler-Benz Aerospace, actually, and then I did afterwards a 6 months postgraduate study to becoming an Asia manager because I wanted to go to China. I studied that, so I left afterwards to China and was negotiating joint ventures in China and Hong Kong for 2 3 years actually. Then I
Hmm.
came back and worked for some other large international family businesses, family companies, because I realized working in a family company is different than to work for a multinational, where you're rather, let's say, a number and there are more elbows, and the values where I was raised off with my family company was easier to be found in family businesses and smaller companies.
Yes, and I think that especially like businesses, it's just same as culture for each country. It's a different platform, a different way of doing things. Was there a challenge for you then in China, trying to navigate that business atmosphere?
It was absolutely a challenge, of course, but I loved the challenge because I was 31 at that time, and I was 25 years ago, and it was at that time there were not many Westerners in the area where I was. I think in the city I was the onlyest, and the Chinese expect some seniority. They would love to have older people and not young people. So I had to fight. I had to learn, and I learned a lot. And yeah, I loved it after a while, and I became very good friends with all the Chinese people there.
Hmm.
So yeah, I loved it. It was a great challenge, but I learned a lot, and it helped me really to grow and to understand other cultures.
Yes, and that's the key too, especially if you want to be international and global. Uh, The culture is different, but I guess the business part, the principle is still the same when you really think about it.
We are all humans at the end. And if you meet on a personal side, it doesn't matter if you're from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, from the US, on a human level. I think we all are very similar and we have same values. We all want to entertain, we want to laugh, we want to have happiness, we want to be challenged maybe also. But this is everywhere the same. It's just learning about requirements within the culture, especially for business. The habits of negotiations are very different, but this is something that can be learned very easily.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Appreciate that. Now, you, as I mentioned earlier, that you was involved in a lot of international projects. For example, Mackenzie and Roland Beck. And I mean, can you elaborate a little bit more on those? How did you get involved in those projects?
Actually, I'm a mobility expert, and in this field, McKinsey and Roland Berger, they approached me because they needed a domain expert for some projects. So that's how I joined them, and I did some, for instance, some projects in Bahrain and in Dubai. I'm even at the moment in an advisory board of a publicly listed company in Bahrain, which is very exciting for me because I learn a bit how they are working, how professional they are. So, and working with consultants also helped me to have a bit different perspective on structuring things because the consultants have their own way in approaching things. They are very systematic. And this is a really added value, let's say, to one's own work approaching projects.
Wow. Oh, okay. So that's really been keeping you kind of busy too. Now, we're going to pivot a little bit because I want to really have the discussion more and more about the African continent. And of course, most of our audience are, pretty much based on the continent. Now, you do have some sort of experiences there with Africa. What are some of your experiences with the continent as a whole?
Basically, when I was a speaker of the FITC in Nigeria, for instance, talking about the VUCA concept, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and we had a discussion afterwards with some high-ranking on C-level African managers. That was very interesting because the way they ask and their passion about understanding what is the concept and what does it mean for them was quite inspiring for me. I was pretty much impressed by that curiosity and that strong drive really to learn, but also the quick understanding about kind of these concepts. So I think that Africa is still undervalued, and so it's important really to support Africa, not in the sense as I see with a lot of countries just getting out some raw materials, whatever, but to create a value within the African countries and to make them more independent and also more wealthy in their economies.
Yes, absolutely. And that's just always been one of the challenge, especially when it comes down to the African continent, because you have a lot of young entrepreneur SMEs, just trying to, start a business, try to skate up. Now, I know your specialties is pretty much in investment advisory, to advise investors. So that's kind of bring me down to GVI, Global Vision Investment. How did that come about?
Actually, I was often asked by entrepreneurs if I can help them a bit when they started their startup, or sometimes even when they were on the journey, how to improve and develop in the right way. And since they come to me quite often, at a certain time I say, okay, I love working with entrepreneurs. I love sharing my experience and also my international network to make them successful. And from this point, I say, okay, either I do it 100% or I shouldn't do it, but always, let's say, do it at 10%. Does not really makes me happy and the others as well. So I decided at one point in time to found a company, GVI Investment Advisory, and to work with startups, to work with VCs, with a clear mission to increase the success rate of startups. Because the average success rate over first 5 years globally is at the moment at 10%, meaning 90% will not survive the first 5 years. And this is something I do not want to accept. I want to change that. I want to improve that. And this is why I'm working with startups, but also with innovation ecosystems in countries, because that
Yeah.
works together.
Yes, absolutely. And so, how long has GVI been in service?
Actually, I started that professionally beginning of last year. So I can say I'm a startup myself in
Right.
that perspective. Yeah. But I have already partners in the US, in Israel, in India, in Bahrain, and shortly in Dubai. So I'm more and more partners and networks are coming to me, and I'm very happy to work with experts in different countries because I cannot be present everywhere. So I'm extending that network, and I'm working on a global scale at the moment.
Oh, okay. And the fact that you're coming in with a lot of, I would say, wealth of knowledge, that's a very good startup, so to speak. So
Absolutely, Jerome.
right. So now, with that in mind, obviously there had to be some challenges in that as well to establishing that, even though you had the knowledge. But what were some of the challenges for you putting together GVI?
Let's say putting GVI together was not difficult. The timing turned out not to be, let's say, the best one, because we all know that midst of last year, the VC market kind of declined and even crashed. And the first half year of 2023 of this year even turned out to be worse. So VCs are not really investing at the moment. And that is very difficult also for me because it's becomes more difficult to help startups in fundraising at the moment, especially if they don't have revenues. The VCs don't go risk at the moment. So this is the largest challenge I have at the moment on the one hand. On the other hand, of course, I want to have more startups, not only a few. So I was always thinking, how can I leverage that? And this is where I come to the idea in launching an online accelerator. So a tool, an online tool, where startups and founders can learn how to build a company in a very professional way, increasing their success rate in fundraising, but also on their journey.
Oh, wow. Oh, okay. So what are some of the uh I would say companies that you work along with? Are those companies just in Europe, or as those also like in Africa as well?
They are not yet in Africa. I'm in touch with one startup from South Africa at the moment.
Hmm.
All the others are from the US, from Israel, from Singapore, so from India, so from all over the world, actually. I have two from Germany, even, but mostly they are from other countries. So I'm open to that. It's more for me interesting to have founders who are very passionate but also open-minded, who are learning and developing first. I think have a good, let's say, business model, and that's the most important for me.
Oh, okay. Appreciate that. So in terms of strategy, uh, what then you say would be the strategy for GVI?
The strategy is still a bit, let's say, developing at the moment because it's always a question whether I hire a lot of people and build up a big team or if I
Hmm.
work a bit independently with external partners, which gives me more flexibility. So this is always something I'm asking myself. I haven't decided yet. So that's fine. On the other hand, I have not really needed to reach out to startups. They always came to me via
Hmm.
networks, also via LinkedIn. So I'm very happy and I'm not focused on one domain. So I'm open as long as I can relate to that sector or domain they are working. It's fine. It doesn't matter where they are coming from. I'm always happy to support it from whatever country they are from.
Yeah. And the thing is, starting a business can be very challenging. The anxieties. Now, a lot of times people say normally within the first 5 years, it's one of the most challenging time in a business. From your experience, what do you think is the most challenging time? What's the length of time you think, and what do you think contribute towards that?
As you said, you rightly said, the most difficult times are the first 5 years. Of course, you work until you get the first funds, which is very difficult. But a lot of startup, once they have received the first funds from a VC or from a business angel, they think now they are successful and they don't watch the cash flow. And this is very bad. And this is a reason why a lot of startups fail. Because if you get money, your journey continues, but on a different responsibility. It's a bit like you're at home in your family.
Mhm.
And when you leave your family, of course, you are free. It's like you're getting the funds, but you have also another responsibility. And so I think the first 4 or 5 years are very essential. And only after that, you know whether you're really successful or not.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay. And so as far as being successful in what you do, can you give an example of a success story that you may have encountered?
Actually, before I started a GVI investment advisory, I worked for a company, a startup from another country,
Mhm.
and the investors pushed them to scale very fast and only to watch the top line, the revenues, something which you have seen until last year in this whole scene. So we see pushing startups grow fast, scale, you get a lot of money, look for the revenues, don't look at the profitability. We look at that later. But this caused a lot of problems. The company I was working for came to Germany. They bought a lot of contracts and market shares on the revenue side. They were significantly loss making. And then they hired me and a partner, and we went in. And our task was really to care for the bottom line, to make it profitable, and to expand even in the same pace. And this we did actually. We achieved it. We became market leader. We became the most profitable company in that domain. So that was really successful. And about 8 years later, that company that was successful over the 5 years was sold to a large investment company for over 2 billion euros. So that was really an excellent success story, which I, let's say, was responsible to be part of that one myself.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That sounds real nice. Yep. So obviously, as we mentioned earlier, you started with the banking, and you say you didn't like that too much. So,
No,
so
not
I'm thinking,
really.
right. So I'm thinking with the investment side of things, where did that come from? I mean, what, as you're speaking and I'm listening to you, I can tell the passion in the part of investment, trying to help startups and trying to advise people how to invest, and get a good return. But where did that come from? I mean, what? How did you pivot into that direction?
Very interestingly, very often things from our past during our life suddenly connect. And very often we are not aware of this one. So, answering your question, it's very simple. It's the entrepreneurship I was raised at with my family business or my father's family business. On
Hmm.
the other hand, it was my banking or my, let's say, career as a CFO. So put it together. The entrepreneurship is the part where I support entrepreneurs because I have the experience, I have the expertise, and I have the passion. I love to work with them and to make them successful, to share my knowledge, to mentor them also. I'm a trained coach, certified business coach as well. So this is on the one hand, but as a CFO, I know about financing. So here comes the investor side on the other side, and I bring it both together. And this is actually what I'm doing. So it was maybe a coincidence unconsciously, but it had to culminate at this point in GVI investment advisory.
So yeah, so it's a perfect, kind of a perfect marriage, with the
Absolutely.
two, yeah,
Absolutely.
coming in together. That's real nice. So what I want to focus on a little bit more now is, like I said, my audience are those that predominantly in the continent of Africa, or they may be outside of Africa and trying to do business, in Africa. So you talk about advisory. So I want to focus a little bit on how can we help those ones. What are some? How can you be able to share some of your knowledge in that process there? what are some of the challenges you feel when it comes to Africa as a whole
Hmm.
for a investor or someone who wants to go in there and invest? Because the opportunity are there, but
Hmm.
a lot of times most people are a little bit skeptical about it. So
Absolutely, absolutely. It's because in the past everybody was focused more on investing in Asia, and now suddenly changing that to Africa shows that there is not yet the knowledge about Africa. There is maybe not yet really the trust because people have not really been in contact, traveled, and analyzed everything. It's still a bit too far away from that. And this, I think, we have to change. And one reason is networks, being in international networks, but also being in African networks, to join that, to understand better what Africa is about, what great ideas, business ideas, and people you have at the moment, which is very impressive. And via networks, people, also investors, can learn that and become more confident in investing and then also going to Africa. I think that's one part. The other part is that the innovation systems, the national innovation systems in the country, are not yet mature. Of course, it takes some time, but very often for an investor, it's important to have also a sound innovation ecosystem in the country. If you just have selected SMEs who have some good business ideas, but there is no, let's say, innovation hub behind it, it makes it more difficult because you don't know how sustainable they can develop. As we see, you can give them money, but the startup needs also the environment in the country to develop in the way it should be or it wants to do.
yes, absolutely. And so that really makes sense. The awareness, they have to educate themselves in there, and as you mentioned, to getting involved in some of these network that are on the ground there. And I like the part you mentioned. It's not just about just the financial side of investment, but also the know-how. You have those that are on the ground that perhaps understand how things are done over there, and of course don't have the capital, but then an investor can come in and they can kind of merge together that partnership and be able to do that. And that's part of the reason why too, I'm actually doing this podcast, because it's trying to get different perspective. We try to talk to those, so because some of my guests are entrepreneur in Africa,
Mhm.
and they would talk about their challenges, what they may do, and someone else, an investor maybe be watching this program, can see that and say, "Oh wow, okay, I can get in touch with that person and see how we can partner, and perhaps solve those situation there." So your input on it is very, very important, because you, from a global standpoint, I mean, you have been a different culture when it comes to the line of business internationally, and you can be able to share some of those things with us. Now, you mentioned about technology, which is obviously a huge issue on the continent of Africa. How much does that play in the business atmosphere?
It always depends, Jerome. It's a very good question, a very important question. It depends a bit about the countries, on the one hand, what you have, on the other hand, what you need. So there are certain technologies evolving in some African countries with some interesting business models, which can be scaled and can be very successful. On the other side, there is a need for certain technologies in Africa, which sometimes in the own countries cannot be developed because the knowledge is not there. The universities, the deep tech, the research institutes are not on that level. So it's
Right.
then the question how to get technology from other countries, from other research institutes to African countries, but then let the technology being developed in a national customized ecosystem or business model by African people themselves. So it should not be that only people from outside come, do the business, and get the money. It's important that that will be, let's say, penetrated into the African economy and society. This is also something which we promote at the World Business Angel Investment Forum to qualify angel investors, to qualify startups to being able to better take up technologies, build up business models, and bring it to the benefit of the economy and society in African countries.
Yes, absolutely, and that is so important. With with having the technology there, and I know sometimes people may shy away from, well, not wanting to do business there because they feel, well, certain things are not there. But Africa as a whole, I always say, it's like an emerging market. You know, if you once you get in there, you can kind of get in there. You can set the pace. You can be one of those that become an innovator in that process. But as you mentioned, it's always good to have the local involved in the process as well, because that's what makes it sustainable. And it's not
Abs-
just throwing the money in there to do it with another idea, but giving them the resources and let them become innovative on how they do things in Africa. As a,
Exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
That's the only path we need to go, and that's the way to grow, let's say, also the African economies, and everybody will benefit from that. Also, US, Europe, Asia will benefit from strong economies in Africa.
Yeah, yeah. So now you also mentioned too about venture capital. How is that now? Would that be is that something that's accessible to, say, for example, entrepreneur or SMEs, on the continent? What would be some of the requirements? What do they have to do to be able to get some of those, of have access to venture capitals?
I mean, there are venture capitalists, African venture capitalists, coming more and more, especially also from sometimes rich families or other investors who start investing in the startup ecosystem in Africa, which is very good. We see in the western part of US and Europe and partly Asia, some VCs going to Africa, to some countries already to invest because they realize that there is a high potential there. So this is
Hmm.
very important. You have not only VCs, you have CVCs, so corporate VCs, but this is still missing. This is, let's say, a longer process. Very important are the business angels, because if you have an SME or a small startup, let's say in Africa, you need smaller tickets, so you have smaller funds. And for this one, I think business angels for the first support, for the first funding rounds, are more suitable. So it's important to push first the business angel network in the countries. And then when a startup reaches, let's say, the second funding round, then to bring in the VCs. It's
Mm.
developing at the moment. I see it's more interest. And there's also push in the business angels. There's the African accelerator. So there are a lot of programs at the moment, and also events like in Johannesburg, I think in end of the year in November. So it's coming. It's very interesting for startups. It's very important to get to know where are accelerators, to go to events, because there you can meet business angels, there you can meet VCs, and a personal contact on such events brings you really a head start. It's much more likely that you get funding when you meet the people there than just sending out emails or answering on posts or something like this one.
Yes, and that's what I appreciate so much about WBAF. Uh, that's a very nice platform and network that allows individuals in there to collaborate. You may have someone in Dubai, you may have someone in Singapore, far away, but can be able to collaborate and address some of the issues in some of these various countries. So I'm going to pivot a little bit, try to take you back home a little bit, get you off of the continent of Africa for a little bit, and take you back. Now, you attended the German Startup Award program in 2023. How was that?
That was amazing. That was amazing. I saw great startups with amazing business ideas, very interesting founded teams. Also, the way they present the startups or their ideas and business model was really amazing. So, seeing kind of these startups is very impressive and inspiring. And I think the startup scene needs to see success stories in order to keep the motivation and to see that the better the quality of the startup, of the venture building of the startup is, there is a good likelihood that they will get funding and they will become successful. So also prices and references are always very important.
Yes. Yeah. So a program like that, initiative like that, of course, it's an award program. But why you think that is so valuable to do?
Sorry, why is it
What?
so valuable?
Yeah, why is it so valuable to have such a program such as these ones? Like
Because
the.
it shows what you can achieve. It
Hmm.
gives you inspiration. It shows you how others have achieved that and gives you a way also to go, what to consider, what is important for this one. And I think this inspiration, this motivations, like having also testimonials, is very important, especially in Africa, because here in Europe we haven't heard a lot about very successful African startups, but they are. But it's important also to bring that into the awareness in the US and into Europe, because then VCs and business angels have the awareness, wow, it's interesting. We should have a closer look to Africa, to African countries, because a lot of things are going on. We are not aware of that one, and we would
Hmm.
love to know this.
Yes. And that's why I asked the question too, because it brings that to the forefront, allow others to see, and then of course they can imagine themselves there or doing that, and it kind of build, like you said, the inspiration there for uh, the innovation part of it. And I started a business in Liberia, and that's one of the things that really moved me the most because you have individuals that are very skillful. Um,
Mhm.
but of course, financial side of things, and then you also have the lack of professionalism,
Mhm.
on their part. So my take when I did the feasibility study, it was not about financial help, but it was more of a know-how, you know, even down to a business etiquettes, how to retain a customer if you have one, having an office space or something like that where people can come and take you much more seriously. They value your service that way for the fact that how you present yourself. Now, how important that is when it comes to professionalism.
I think it's most crucial. It's most important. On the one hand, you need the idea, but you have to bring that into a business model. You have to form a startup, a company. And that's a lot of responsibility. I see most founders focusing on the product, which is
Hmm.
important. But it's not only about the product, it's also about understanding the market, how to approach the market, sales, marketing channels, all these ones. It's about also the founder team, development, what talents do you need? So there is a lot of around. If you run a company, you need to know about finance, about P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow. You need about some legal stuff, some tech stuff. So it's a lot of things. And if you really want to be successful, you need to know all of this one or most of that one. So the competence and the know-how is very important. And if you have not had that in the past, for a young founder coming from university with a great idea, you cannot expect that from him. So there are two chances. The one is he gets somebody on board who is experienced on that one and helps him, or he gets to have it learned himself. This is, for instance, why I'm offering this online accelerator. So everybody in the world at any time can learn all these, because it's a program where you learn with your own pace online whenever you want, all the things you need to know how to set up a company and how to run the company in a most professional manner. So know-how, as you said, it's utmost important, and we can't do enough to improve the know-how of founders and startups in the countries.
Yes, yes, so good. And that makes absolutely sense too. So you measure that about accelerator program that you have. Now, is that something you can be reached on LinkedIn about that? How can someone reach out to you
Absolutely.
to take access of that program?
Yes, it's on LinkedIn. It's on LinkedIn. It's you can click there. You find the links for that one. I
Okay.
posted that, and you can contact me also via LinkedIn. I think I'm one of the few who's answering nearly all messages I get, as long as I can cope with that one. But so
Yeah.
far, it was always my priority. If somebody takes the effort to write to me, which I
Mhm.
really appreciate, of course, I will answer this as well.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned about the family business. What was that? Is that the mobility business?
The family business I'm coming from is not in the mobility. That's in the media part. That's a totally different business, let's say.
Okay.
But working in the media, working with the press, is always something which helps you in your business, because nowadays it's not only about having a business, but
Hmm.
also in marketing yourself.
Right.
Personal branding is very important. So this is why, for instance, not only having a LinkedIn presence, but knowing how to utilize LinkedIn in a way to present oneself or the business idea in a much more professional and better way. That's a very helpful tool.
Yes, it certainly is a good tool. LinkedIn is a very good tools to use, and for those who a young entrepreneur coming up, ready to take advantage of these things and be able to know how to, again, like you said, how to use it to maximize it in branding your business. Of course,
Absolutely.
website
And
play a huge part in that as well. To having a website and those things all play a
absolutely.
good.
And LinkedIn is free. So it's free of charge. You can use it, but you have to learn it. Yeah. Still,
Yeah.
I'm learning. I have to look at the algorithms. I have to see when I post, how to build the network. This is very important. And this is also very helpful for anybody, because LinkedIn is really one of the focal points, really, to make network connections. Yeah.
Yes.
Just give me a second. I have to put in the power into my laptop. Otherwise, I will disappear in a few seconds. But
Okay.
you go on. I listen to you.
All right. No problem. We'll give you a few minutes.
No need. I'm already back. It's
Okay.
done.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. So speaking about LinkedIn, social media, those platforms uh, play a huge part too in, like you said, branding your business. Why is that so important that a young entrepreneur, uh, SME, take advantage of these
Mhm.
tools?
Yes, I mean, wherever you are, you can be on the countryside, in a small country, as long as you have access to the internet. You can market your business online. You can build networks to people all over the world with LinkedIn. And if you know how to do that, and that is a huge competitive advantage, but also compulsory nowadays when you want to become successful, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a huge opportunity, and everybody can use it. And it doesn't matter where somebody is from, what he is doing. Everybody can access it. Everybody has the rights, the same rights, equality for everybody on LinkedIn. Everybody can achieve the same on LinkedIn. Yeah,
Right. Right.
this is wonderful, because we need this equality, so that there's no difference, that if you have more money or not, it doesn't influence your LinkedIn representation.
Yeah. And that's why it's so kind of crucial to the continent of Africa, because there are so many other countries there that people don't have access to the internet service, as in the developed world, so to speak. And so that even add on more challenge to them in terms of doing their business. I gave you an example, like Liberia. I mean, you have to buy the scratch card for data to put it to your phone. So the
Okay.
average person don't have that much of a data in there to not, to search the internet. They usually use it for maybe just social media, posting something
Mhm.
on there or making some phone calls, you know. And that was one of the platforms that I put together too, having an office space where you have an internet service, you can subscribe to it, and they can come in there and
Mhm.
be able to search the net and do some research, network, with other organization and things of that nature. Have you?
Excellent. That, I think that is the solution. If you don't have it, somebody has to give office spaces or co-working space where
Right.
people can meet and they have the infrastructure to do business. And this is also the place where you can maybe teach them if they need more skills, where
Yeah.
you can help them to network. And so it's important to have kind of this innovation hub in all major cities.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, Frank, we really thoroughly enjoy talking with you, and of course, as we mentioned that before we let you go, that we do have what we call the 5 for 5. And so we're going to ask you 5 questions that you can kind of rapidly answer as fast as possible. No pressure, you know,
No pressure, but
no
answer
pressure
as fast as possible.
as
Sure, that's a
possible.
bit contradictive, right?
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and do the countdown and then we'll ask the questions.
Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to that. Thanks very much so far for the great question and the great discussion.
Thank you. Okay. So the 5 for 5. So question number one is the best part of your day.
Best part of my day?
Yeah.
The best part of my day is when I meet friends or colleagues, or when I'm in touch also on the internet with people all around the world. If I have on Saturday morning at 8:30 my time a video call with an investor of another country, and we have a great understanding, and said next time we are close to each other, we go for dinner. This
Oh,
is what I really love.
yes. Okay. So you mix it up. We'll work and play, so to speak.
Absolutely,
All
absolutely.
right.
Love it. Love
Okay.
it.
Love it. All right. So the next question is worst advice ever given. So the worst advice is probably someone had given you.
The worst advice what given me, that was my father who told me to have the internship at the bank. That was the worst advice I ever got, actually. I didn't know at that time, but later I knew.
Okay. Okay. All right. And so the third one here is your favorite food. What is it?
My favorite food? Oh, that's a good question. I'm vegetarian. I don't eat meat, so it's a bit restrictive. But
Oh,
I occasionally eat fish. I love Indian food. I love Japanese food. Actually, I love Italian food. So that's actually my favorite. But for myself, sometimes just put it together some veggies with some nice spices is already pleasant for me.
oh wow. And I can see my wife in the background clapping because she's a vegetarian. Yeah. That's right.
Really?
That's right there
Wow.
in her line.
Oh, you're a poor man then, right? Having vegetarians
Pray for me.
around.
Okay. All right. So the fourth question here is your favorite quote. What would that be if you
My
have one?
favorite what?
A favorite quote or quotation.
I'll quote quotation. I don't have a favorite quotation actually because I don't like quotations. Actually, I hate quotations because quoting is just copying somebody else.
Okay.
Everything I want to sell is something which I have experienced coming from me. So I'm a non-quoter
Okay. All right.
or a quote hater.
Quote hater. So that's what it is.
That's even worse.
That's absolutely okay. And of course, the final question here is a final comment that you have for the UMG family, our listeners.
Well, I love what you do. I love, let's say, a very good question, and trying to help founders, entrepreneurs, and SMEs getting inspiration for these kind of podcasts and discussions, and to bring it to Africa. I think we need to do a lot, really, or much more to enable African startups and founders to be motivated, to be persistent, to go through whatever it takes, and then to become successful. And I think you're contributing to that one a lot, and I love that, and I appreciate that. I'm very thankful that I was invited to support you in that mission.
Oh, thank you so much, Frank. It was a pleasure having you, and of course, being able to gain from some of your wealth of knowledge and experience that you're able to share that to our partners, our listeners here as well. So thank you so much. We wish you the best with GVI. Keep up the good work that you are doing there with you. I mean, with the team, and of course, hopefully we'll bring you back on the show at another time and allow our audience to be able to ask you some questions directly, so to speak.
Would be wonderful. Jerome, thanks very much. Pleasure is mine. Was wonderful talking to you and also on your mission. Good luck and let's create impact to the benefit of African founders.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you
Okay,
very
so
much.
all right. So to my listeners, thank you so much. I appreciate the fact that you were with us this time around. Hopefully, during this conversation, you were able to take out a few points that you can add on to your journey. And as always, jump, but don't jump too high because you have class. See you in the next episode.